Today on the show, I explain what is Catacombs and Cathedrals, my Substack, my outlet, and we're also going to discuss that the mainstream media is at it again, and we're also going to talk about Christians, we need to be involved. Hello, I'm Pastor Seth Oder. I am the pastor of the Lighthouse Baptist Church in Comanche, Iowa, small little river town in Iowa on the Mississippi River, not too far from the Quad Cities. Some of you that means nothing, but it means Davenport, Bettendorf, Rock Island, Moline, and so 2 in Iowa, 2 in Illinois. And for the people that will probably end up watching this or listening to it, the 2 or 3 of you, probably are friends and family or church members or what have you. But I just want to explain a little bit about why I'm doing this. Simply, I'm doing this because I have such a sponge for a brain and I can't get everything out all the time. And that goes between preaching sermons and teaching and conversations with people. It just gives me another outlet to talk about things that are on my mind. I'm always watching, keeping up with news, politics. I love politics. I love culture, love theology, books. All of these things at some point are going to get discussed. And so yeah, I don't know if I call this a ministry, Catacombs and Cathedral. It's just an outlet, a Substack, a Facebook page I have. Certain things, and I haven't really done a whole lot. I've written a few things on Substack. So my purpose for doing this on a personal level is because, man, I just want to do it. I've always been fascinated with radio, TV. Worked in radio for a little bit, not very long, but for a little bit. In high school, I was on, going back 20 plus years, we had a high school broadcast news, and I was on that and enjoyed it. I thought broadcasting would be something I'd go into at one point, but I didn't. And now everybody can pick up a phone, and I'm using a phone and a lapel mic that connects into my phone. Anybody can do a phone, podcast, vlog. I mean, social media is so awesome nowadays that anybody can do this. So I am broadcasting with minimal equipment, but a lot of things in my head, a lot of ideas. And so I'm going to be sharing thoughts along the way. And it just gives me an outlet to do that, even if nobody watches. I feel like I'm, getting some stuff squeezed out of my brain here. So the first thing that I want to talk about in relation to the purpose of this outlet that I'm using is Christians across the board, but conservative Baptists like myself, and I'm a conservative Baptist, and I'm unashamedly so. I'm not an independent fundamentalist Baptist, King James only. There's a difference if you understand your Baptist groups. I'm not Southern Baptist. I pastor a church that affiliates with the General Association of Regular Baptist Churches, and I'm not going to go into all those details now about what that means if you don't understand that. But I'm a conservative Baptist, a Bible-believing Baptist. I also hold to Calvinistic soteriology, unashamedly so, emphasis on the sovereignty of God in all things, including salvation. So that's where I'm coming from. And I think in part, some of this is to just speak to people in my circles, that I already rub shoulders with. We have a lot of work to do. And I think that, as we're seeing other Christians from other type of denominational animals, and I don't mean that they're animalistic or to degrade, I'm just saying different species of Christian, Lutheran, well, I guess not so much Lutherans, but the Presbyterians and the Reformed and some Baptists are doing, well, I think rightfully, what they are doing is trying to have an impact in culture, not just limiting it to the church, but trying to influence culture, politics, government, you name it. And I think that for so long, us as conservative Baptists, and if you want to call me a fundamentalist, like whatever, I don't care. I do have a fundamentalist stripe going down my back in a lot of ways, just so you know where I'm coming from. Conservative and fundamental Baptists for a long time have been far too pietistic, and piety is being sanctified, set apart, holy unto God. A pious person is somebody who's set apart. It's being set apart to the Lord. Pietism is a thing that developed out of originally Lutheranism, German Lutheranism. They saw some issues, thought that their churches were all dead, there was nothing going on, so they wanted to get into the heart of things. And so it kind of developed on its own in various different forms of Christianity, emphasizing the inward part of the person, the movements of the Spirit. It was spirit versus the letter of the law, that sort of thing. Kind of going back to the radical reformers like the Anabaptists and the Mennonites and others. And again, I can't speak to Reformed Presbyterians and others because I have friends in those camps, but I'm not in that camp. So I don't feel like I can criticize or talk, because you know what, they can deal with their own issues in house. And I'm not necessarily criticizing the circle that I run in, because I love it. I love the circles I run in. I love the GARBC. I love conservative Baptists. I love, Calvinistic Baptist, Reformed Baptist, things like that. I just think that we, as individual pastors, as individual Christians, as individual churches, and then as association and as a movement, if you want to call it that, lack influence. We lack influence not just in politics and culture. Those are the obvious ones that we like to initially point out. But I think even in the place of theological ideas, I think in the place of just finding ourselves in the grand scheme of church choice in America today, we're lost in the shuffle. And I think it's because we haven't found our voice, and we haven't found, at least in modern times, we used to have some stalwarts that were well known and respected. And I'm not saying that we need to be popular and we need to climb for popularity, and we got to have somebody in our circles that's, Billy Graham type, or, making it modern, somebody as big as John MacArthur or Douglas Wilson or somebody like that. I'm not saying we necessarily need that, but I think we need to have more of an influence. We need to have more of an impact. And I understand diagnosing the problem is usually easier than finding the solutions. And so this past year I was at family camp, and we had a speaker that was wonderful, and who made some observations as he travels around to various churches in our circles, and said, I'm finding that a lot of our churches just have no influence and no impact, whether that be evangelistically, whether that be having a cultural influence. We certainly don't have a cultural influence. If you can hear the train, we live a block away from the train, and he's continuing to go. So, and I've got thin walls here in my office, so you can hear the train. Cool. But yeah, it's easy to diagnose and for me to say that and to not offer solutions. And so this might get me in trouble, but I think we need to take some things out of the playbook of some of the current Christian nationalist or even Reconstructionist crowd. And I know that might cause some, whoa, what are you saying here? I'm not a Reconstructionist. I'm not in line with Doug Wilson of Moscow, Idaho on everything. There's a lot of things I like and admire. There's a lot of things I like from certain guys that can help in some areas. I don't think that our hermeneutic and our eschatological views need to determine whether we should have an influence and an impact in society. Now, of course, the post-millennialists are going to say, if you're not post-millennial, so especially it's thrown at dispensationalists all the time, is, well, you guys are so inconsistent. You couldn't have influence because you just believe everything's going to get worse, and influence. You stick to your pietism because you just believe the only things that matter are the spiritual. Get everybody into the lifeboat at the last second because the world's going to end tomorrow. And look, I agree with some of those criticisms, and so that's kind of where I want to start. Is in agreement with some of the criticisms that are levied towards Baptists, and so which ties into my topic of, hey guys, we need to be having more of an influence. We need to be in business, in media, in politics, and government, and I agree too that we don't need more pastors doing things even like this. I'm a pastor, but we need the guys in the pews. We need businessmen. We need politicians. We need artists and musicians. And we need the electricians, the plumbers, the professors, the teachers, the farmer. We need Christians, Bible believing, and again, to my circle that I'm in, and maybe you're sitting there thinking, well, yeah, we already have that. Awesome, great. I don't think necessarily, though, that we have the influence, especially in a broader cultural scale, nor do we even have it in an educational scale as well. Many of the churches, or rather colleges and seminaries that have been associated with our circle, like in the JRBC or Conservative Baptist, have closed in the last 15 to 20 years. They say, well, post-millennialism, amillennialism, these things are taken over, and so the dispensational schools are being emptied. Look, I don't think that should be the excuse, but I do think there are more people wanting, in our churches, wanting church leaders, wanting Christian leaders to really take it to the cultural Marxism that we're seeing in our society today. Why is it when you look around? Let's take Donald Trump, for instance. Now, I'm glad he had Franklin Graham pray at his inauguration, one of the many prayers that were offered up. But the people around him, other than Pete Hegseth, who was a Reformed Presbyterian, and hey, I'm grateful for him. But you don't see a lot of conservative evangelicals. That's just in the government now that they're the government themselves. But you see people from all different religious backgrounds, or if they're Christian under the big umbrella, they're Roman Catholic. Consider, for instance, in conservative media, the majority of people in conservative media are Roman Catholic. Matt Walsh, and I love listening to the Matt Walsh show. Michael Knowles. Now, Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA, and his media, he's evangelical. Candace Owens was Reformed evangelical and now is Roman Catholic. And so you see where I'm going with this is Roman Catholicism, or even conservatives, or at least populists that are atheistic or from another pagan religion, have gone to the forefront and have filled the void where so many Christians have left it unfilled. And I do agree with the critique of Baptists in many ways. Hey, Baptists, you've bought into this individualistic pietism to the point that you've secluded yourselves. And I do think that is absolutely true. Look, I believe in personal and ecclesiastical separation, meaning I separate. A true Christian should be separate from the world in the sense, see, we're in the world, not of it, The old fundamentalist trope was, man, you just you don't go anywhere. I mean, that's what it seemed like. You can't talk to anybody unless they're a Christian, unless they're even in your church. I mean, I remember being told as a teenager, I went to a Bible study that was like an interdenominational type thing. It was great. Told that I shouldn't be doing that, you know, stuff like that. Now we're talking about being unstained from the world, you know, and yeah, maybe there are people you need to cut out of your life, but I don't think ever to the point that you know, you shouldn't be at least trying to have an influence. And so, I mean, you should. I agree. You shouldn't. Your best friend probably shouldn't be the atheistic guy that gets drunk every night and goes to strip clubs. You shouldn't be unequally yoked in marriage, right? Ecclesial separation, ecclesiastical. We want to keep our distance from theological liberalism. Also, even I know conservative Reformed, conservative Lutheran guys, conservative charismatics that I would never have in my pulpit and I would never be in theirs. Okay? Some of these other churches practice ecclesiastical separation as well. I would never be allowed to preach, for instance, in an LCMS, Lutheran Church Missouri Synod church. And hey, awesome. I'm glad, because they are trying to protect the integrity of their church and their doctrines. And so, but it's like when a Baptist says that or does that, then it's like, oh, you guys are, you know, just these nuts. And you know, and I wouldn't have a problem with having certain guys in other denominations in my pulpit now, depending on certain views. And in fact, I did have a guy that was from a Reformed church fill in for me here. And I don't know, maybe that makes the my fellow Baptist brothers that are running my circles kind of shudder a little bit. I don't know. So this journey that I'm going to be on in terms of this show, whatever this is I want us to have an impact in culture. And I've been telling this to my congregation. We're a small church, and some people have taken me very seriously. And I said, you know, get on a committee with the city, get on a committee with the Republican Party or whatever, and just start there and start having influence. You've got people doing that, taking it seriously. Like, hey, and you can be a dispensationalist and realize that, hey, God owns everything. You can be Kuyperian if you want to. I am. The world, the universe is the Lord's. He is the king. He owns every square inch. We have the right, and I believe the duty, to fly the banner of Christ and stake its claim wherever we go. Because it's already his anyway. I know a lot of dispensationalists don't necessarily think the way, and okay, that's fine. But I'm just saying, you know, there was a time where conservative or fundamental Baptists did have influence, and it's gone. And I want to reclaim that. I want to have a seat at the table. Not necessarily me. I'm just saying people from our style of church. And we might not be welcome at some of these round tables, you know, Reformed guys, Reformed Baptists, what have you. And okay, that's fine. But I do think that we can turn it up a little bit. The first area that we need to turn this up, and I'm going to be preaching on this in my church, is simply the Great Commission. And let me dispel a myth for you right now. The Great Commission isn't just about personal evangelism. You know, we use the Great Commission to kind of guilt people sometimes. I think the Great Commission involves cultural dominion. Now, that might make me a dominionist or research. I don't care what the labels are. I'm just saying what I see in Scripture. Tim LaHaye was a devoted dispensationalist. Yet, him and his wife were on the front lines of cultural impact. and influence. And I know the charge from guys like Gary DeMar and others, they talk about Gary DeMar got his views a lot of, at least it seems, from Gary North. And look, I respect both of those guys, just because they do have some good things to say, especially about influence in the culture. Gary North talked a lot about the schizophrenia, and Gary DeMar does this as well. Talks a lot about the schizophrenia of Baptists or dispensationalists, and that well, their theology says this, but yet they're, and they say, well, Tim LaHaye was a schizophrenic because being a dispensationalist theology would tell you that you're not supposed to be active in culture and all of these things, but yet he was. And look, I don't care what other people say, if it's schizophrenia, theological schizophrenia, whatever. But I do think, hey, maybe Tim LaHaye was onto something. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Left Behind series, but we need to be on the front lines too. Him and his wife are big on trying to stop abortion, advocating for biblical principle, and I understand, so there's this publication called The Failure of American Baptist Culture, in which Gary North had a part in, name I already mentioned. If you don't know this, just go look it up. You can find a free PDF, and there's a lot of good critiques about Baptist culture, things that I agree with. However, there's things that I strongly disagree with, and it was recommended to me by a Presbyterian friend that I should go read this. So I printed off the entire PDF a few years ago and have read through the whole thing. You can find it for free. The Failure of American Baptist Culture. And they talk about this Baptist theological schizophrenia that exists. They talk about how hypocritical, theologically, that Baptists are, and they get that from the radical Anabaptists and on and on and on and on. And I think there's some straw man arguments. I've also seen a few years ago, now about 2.5 years ago, was a Cross Politic episode. And I like Cross Politic. I listen to it regularly. Enjoy those guys on there. And this was actually before I started listening to them, but apparently they said, well, the Baptists are the reason why we have the trans stuff, blaming Baptists and their theological schizophrenia or whatever on the downfall of our society. So I find that hilarious in a lot of ways, because it was actually liberal postmillennialists that were the leaders in the mainline denominations, and look where they have ended up, right? They turned social impact from applying God's law to just applying social justice. They're made up laws. There's actually been Baptists that have held the line. And so, yeah, I understand the critique that, Baptists, we tend to be, and you could ask anybody in my congregation that I have hammered against the individualistic nature of modern evangelicalism. We need to reclaim the fact that we are part of the body of Christ. There's a corporate or collective element. We're not saved collectively, but we do tend to err, some evangelicals, Baptists, tend to err on the individualistic side of the Christian faith. It's always just me and Jesus. It's about how I feel. It's about what's going on in my life, my sin, my faith, all of this stuff. And so I agree. But to say that Baptists are the ones, because of a so-called individualistic theology, that we're the ones that have ultimately led to the transgenderism problem, the downgrade of our society. And I know they're tracing this logic from, individualism, and Gary North did the same thing in Failure of American Baptist Culture, about how, well, because of Baptists, we, as Baptists, they or we, whatever, wait until their child chooses to be a Christian rather than having it imposed on him or her at birth. And let's be real. I think sometimes they just don't understand that there is an imposition of the Christian faith on Baptist children. We don't assume that they're automatically Christian. I get that. But there is an assumption that, there's a benefit for them being born into a Christian family. Now, not covenant successionism. And we educate them in the faith. But their line of reasoning goes, well, if they believe that it takes a while for a child to choose if they want to be a Christian or not, well, the same logic then goes, well, when they grow up, they can choose to be whatever they want. If they're a girl, they choose to be a boy. Well, it just follows Baptist logic. And what a straw man. I think that is such a straw man. And it's kind of the same stuff that's coming out of Moscow recently anyway, with some of their logic and saying, certain people are revoice for Nazis and all of this stuff. And it's just kind of crazy. Anyway, the point of this isn't to go on about canon in Moscow, Idaho, but to simply discuss and to just simply say that, sure, I agree with some critiques of Baptist culture. We need to amp it up. We need to develop ways in which we can have an influence in politics, in government, in the arts, in culture, in business, in healthcare, in education. Because at one time we did. We had Christian schools. We had ways, and I'm not saying that the only way to have an influence is Christian schooling. I homeschool my kids. But I think we need to amp it up. And I'm going to be unpacking that throughout, the lifetime of this outlet. We need to do better. Well, with that being said, I just want to go quickly to a couple of things that I've noticed. So, Inauguration Day was yesterday. Donald Trump is once again the President of the United States, now the 47th President, and also the 45th, a rare thing, achieved only by Grover Cleveland in the late 1800s, who served 2 terms, but not back-to-back. There was a 4-year term in between. So Donald Trump is only the 2nd president in American history to have this. But here's what I want to focus on in this. And should we expect anything different? No. But the mainstream media, and I'm pointing this out because our local NBC affiliate, and I don't know if there's necessarily somebody at our local NBC affiliate that's necessarily writing these things. They're probably getting it from the higher ups at NBC, I would imagine. I don't know their process. But immediately after Donald Trump's inauguration, these are just some of the headlines. Breaking: Trump issues pardons for participants in the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. The next one: the president's address was marked by several false claims, many of which he has made before. And the headline on that is Fact Focus: a look at false and misleading claims Trump made during his inaugural address. Guess what? You can't find anything like this on Joe Biden from the local NBC affiliate. These are in the same day. There's another one about Elon Musk. Elon Musk appears to give awkward salute during post-inauguration speech twice. Musk gave the bizarre salute during his speech at a rally held at the Capital One Arena. Of course, the mainstream media is saying he did the Sieg Heil of the Nazis, of Nazi Germany, yet there is... First of all, he said, "My heart goes out to you," and Elon's kind of an awkward guy, but there's pictures on the internet of Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Who's that? Pocahontas. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. Doing this same thing. It just amazes me as I'm looking through this. Again, our local NBC affiliate. That was all just from yesterday. There's one about launching his meme coin, whatever. Here's one from just an hour ago as I'm recording this. Trump seeks to designate drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order saying the United States will designate drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, a move that could, now listen to this, look at how they word it, a move that could push a militarized agenda for the border in Latin America. They're trying to scare quote that. Oh, it's going to lead to military operations, and it might. I mean, these people need to be stopped. The cartels, and of course the mainstream media doing an interview with an immigrant who wasn't allowed in, and she was crying. And here's the bottom line. Here's the other thing. Just to let you know that the position that I take is America is a country. It's not an idea. We have to have borders, and we can't let everybody in here. And if we're not taking care of our own first, we're actually violating biblical law. I know there's some that want to say, well, no, the Bible means you take care of everybody. Look, listen. And I've said this to my congregation, and they agree. If my family is hungry, and the family down the street is hungry, and I come across a loaf of bread, I'm just saying, let's say we're in a dystopian future, what have you, probably under a Democrat administration. But I somehow come across that loaf of bread. I'm feeding my family first before I think about the family down the street. Why? It's not that I'm wishing harm or wishing ill on the family down the street, but I love my family. We think that everything is egalitarian and everything's equal, that we are supposed to love everybody equally. No, I love my wife more than anybody. More than any woman. She's the only one for me. I'm not obligated to support anybody else, any other woman, like I am with her. My children are my own children. I'm not responsible for every child in my town, in my country, for me to provide equal access. That's what they're supposed to have. Their own parents. Wives are supposed to have their own husbands, right? It's called taking care of your own first, and that's not wrong. That is not un-Christ-like. Get tired of these accusations. Oh, you're not being loving. No, I am. I love my wife. I love my children, and I'm trying to honor God. And it is selective. And so it is with the nation. We cannot take everybody because of some supposed, biblical mandate that we are supposed to be the open arms for the world, and it's not sustainable. It's worn our system down completely. We've alienated actual Americans. A lot of them in the cities, African Americans have been alienated for immigrants. So if you have a problem with taking care of your own first, then hey, too bad. I suggest you rethink your view on that. Let's see, what else do we have going on today. We have from the Daily Caller, which is one of my go-to sites. This one says, "Why you mad? Charlemagne respects how Trump torched Dems to their face in inaugural address." Charlemagne the God Never to listen to his podcast. I know he's popular, he's famous. Leftist, but like other leftists, like a Bill Maher and others, he's at least understanding the Trump phenomenon. Something that the left-wing media is not. Democrats are not. They're not trying to change anything or to look at maybe what they did wrong. So interesting. Charlemagne the God respects how Trump stuck it to the Democrats to their face. Now is not a time to play nice. And Trump is not doing that. I think it's great. Again, going back to just Christians, we think the 11th commandment is be nice. Niceness doesn't get you anywhere. It just doesn't. Niceness is not in the Bible. Kindness is completely different. So you might not think that's nice, especially like the migrant stuff. But the truth isn't always nice, folks. But what can I say? Well, that's going to do it for right now. Again, this is very organic. It'll develop over time, probably be more structured and organized, but I'm giving it a shot. So for the Catacombs and Cathedrals outlet show, your host Seth Oder, I'm signing off.